Is there more information about the birth of Jesus that is not contained in the Bible? What was the mysterious light in the sky on the first Christmas? Where did the Holy Family go to escape the death warrant of King Herod? Are there special places where people are still touched by the incredible power of the Holy Family? Tonight, we will uncover the miracle of the first Christmas.
We all know the story of Christmas, but mysteries of the first Christmas are buried under layers of sand, hidden in unknown caves, encrypted in old papyrus and leather texts. We have bits and pieces of a puzzle that we've put together to bring you an amazing new look at a story you only thought you knew.
In order to understand the story of Christmas, it is important to imagine life 2,000 years ago. The world was very simple. These are the ruins of an ancient town, small by today's standards, with perhaps 200 to 300 residents. The people of these small villages filled their days with the tasks of daily life. Science, as we know it, did not exist. People believed the sky separated Earth from the divine. If something rose, it went to heaven. If something fell, it came from heaven. Illness and disease could be attributed to divine punishment. People were religious. They believed in miracles, acts of God, and magic, the works of Satan. The Romans were in charge of their lives. They hoped that a Messiah who would appear in their lifetime would change their existence. The stories they told reflected the simple life they led.
One of the most striking things about life in Palestine at the time of Jesus would have been its sheer diversity of population. Many people sometimes think that there was an entity known as simply the Jews at the time of Jesus. There was no such thing as the Jews. There was anything from apocalyptic, zealous sects who were very anxious about the end times, all the way to a much more calm and institutionalized form of religion associated with the temple in Jerusalem. It's often been suggested that the time of Palestine and the time of Jesus was a time when people were ready for a Messiah. It was a source of hope that the present conditions that they were living in would come to an end. We have to remember, Roman occupation was a brutal affair, and religion served to buttress their power and served to promote their dominance over the populations that they had conquered.
The reason this was such perfect timing for a Messiah to be born, or Jesus or anyone else for that matter, was that for the first time, the terrible Roman civil wars of the previous century had ended in a wonderful, blissful peace. There was also a common universal language across the whole Mediterranean basin. It was common commercial Greek. This is one of the reasons that the faith born with that baby in Bethlehem would be able to hurdle national and international barriers so successfully.
In order to understand the story of Christmas, it is important to imagine the
Miraculous birth of Jesus and the miracles he performed in his early life.
The subject of miracles, of course, is a very controversial one because we live in a very rational and scientific age. And so we're fascinated with the idea that people routinely thought that non-rational things occurred, that unexplainable things occurred. And yet, from the sources that we have, it's clear that that was a common idea at the time of Jesus.
I've heard people tell me that they've seen angels and that their young grandsons have seen angels. After someone has departed, they refer to seeing the angel with grandma, you know, and I've never seen it myself, but I have to believe people when they say that.
Very often you hear that expression, who says the age of miracles is past? You know, we hear of all kinds of mysterious things taking place in the present day yet. Patients who are terminally ill and there's no hope for them, bouncing back from the very jaws of death to perfect health. It happens.
I think that it is foolish for someone to say there is no such thing as a miracle. By their very nature, you cannot prove a miracle. If it is repeatable, then it's not miraculous. Miracles are phenomena of faith, and they are intended to be a part of faith journeys.
Now, this faith thing is a very, very important human response to what is happening here. And God, who wired us, I think wants that human response called faith, because then we invest ourselves in what we believe. So, what I'm trying to say is there is enough that has been provided for us in the historical records outside the Bible and in the archaeological evidence outside the Bible and in the geographical considerations that you can find over there that show that the faith has a very firm intellectual basis. And it's not blind or dumb at all, but it is our response, which is terribly important as far as this great plan is concerned.
The legend of the Milk Grotto has inspired couples throughout the world to seek its incredible powder with extraordinary results.
Brother Lawrence Bodie relates the significance of this site.
Yes, according to the tradition, the Holy Family was in this place when Mary was giving milk to the baby. One day, a drop of her milk fell and turned the grotto into Mary's milk. Inside, the grotto is pure white. And with this powder, men and women with maternal problems, they come here and ask for the powder. And each day they mix it with milk or water and they drink it together. And then they ask to be healed so that they can have a family. And in the last 4 years, we've heard of over 50 women who have been healed with this devotion. These are some of the pictures of the babies that have been born out of this devotion.
The story of the first Christmas gave birth to a new religion that has inspired the faith of millions of people for over 2,000 years.
The story of the first Christmas begins in Nazareth, home of Mary and Joseph, two ordinary people chosen to partake in an extraordinary event.
They were given a special task. Mary to bear the child who would be the Son of God, and Joseph to be the protector of Mary and Jesus, and in that sense being elevated to a kind of special status that goes along with their special role. I would think they did have a closeness to God.
Their faith was the center of their lives. As was the custom of that time, a woman had to be a virgin when she married. Joseph thought he found the perfect woman to be his wife in the young woman Mary. She came from a religious family and was a virgin. Here in the Church of the Annunciation, people travel from all over the globe to honor the first miracle of Christmas.
Now, certainly there are miracles, a miraculous dimension that are attached to various episodes in the Nativity. According to the New Testament, the angel Gabriel appeared under unique circumstances to this wonderful little peasant girl, Mary, probably not more than 15 years old, and she was told that she would be the mother of the great messianic figure. And it's remarkable, her acceptance. She says, so be it. She makes a fabulous statement. So often it's overlooked. It goes like this: behold, in the future, all generations will call me blessed. Now that turned out to be not an empty prophecy at all. Every generation since that first Christmas more and more people have called her blessed because of what happened at that time. That is unlike anything we find in all of antiquity.
That event took place in this cave. Mary's trust in the angel's message has inspired millions to journey here to renew their faith. Archaeological excavations reveal evidence of pilgrimage as early as 350 AD. As Christianity grew, so did visits of the faithful. A small chapel honors the second miracle.
We have the angelic appearance to Joseph. Joseph, who's engaged to this woman and certainly hasn't married her yet, finds out that his fiancée is going to have a child. Well, Joseph did what any man would normally do at that point. He would break off the marriage plans, and he was ready to do exactly that until he also was visited by the angel. The angel explained what an unusual child was on the way.
Roman Emperor Caesar Augustus ordered a census. Joseph and Mary set out for Bethlehem.
The Roman emperor at the time was Augustus. As a matter of fact, he's the one that Luke first mentions in his nativity account. And his censuses, by the way, were rather famous. It was that middle census of 8 BC, which started a chain of events that brought the Holy Family down to Bethlehem.
The census demanded that all citizens return to their place of birth. Bethlehem was the home of Joseph, so he and Mary set out. The journey from Nazareth to Bethlehem could take well over a week when traveling by foot or mule. Longer still, if made by a pregnant woman. When they reached Bethlehem, the time came for Mary to deliver her child. Joseph searched for a room, but the small town had no vacancies.
According to one of the earliest church fathers, he knew Bethlehem and knew the account, and so he said that Jesus was born in a grotto or a cave or a cavern that was used as a stable. So it was in one of these grottos that Jesus was born.
And on that night in Bethlehem, Jesus, the child of Mary and Joseph, was born.
The main miracle of the whole thing, of course, is that Jesus became a human, that God enters the human condition, which really bursts all the bounds of logic and reason, which is what a miracle often does.
This was God's crossing the great divide between the divine and the human and taking on the form of a little baby. And that baby would grow up to suffer, die, and rise again according to Christian theology in order that we could all be made his brothers and sisters, his fellow children of God. According to Luke's gospel, when the shepherds announced the good news about the birth of a Messiah in Bethlehem, the heavens opened up and there was a heavenly choir which said, "Glory to God in the highest and peace on goodwill toward men."
In 330, Queen Helena, mother of Emperor Constantine, ordered the first church of the Nativity to be built. The original church was destroyed. What remains today is a structure from 529. In the Church of the Nativity, hundreds of thousands of people visit the birthplace of Jesus. Their pilgrimage is a testimony to the enduring and miraculous power of the first Christmas. As they walk through the narrow passageways and visit the altar, they relive the glorious spirit of the moment of Jesus' birth. A birth which would initiate a series of events that would change the world forever.
The next miracle appeared in the sky. It was a star that shone so bright that it could be seen for thousands of miles. In Persia, this star attracted the attention of 3 kings or magi. They were searching the heavens for a sign foretold in their prophecies, a sign that a king would be born. What they saw that night is known to us today as the Star of Bethlehem.
What star was powerful enough to attract the attention of the wise men hundreds of miles away? We turn to the Griffith Observatory in Los Angeles to find the answers.
Most astronomers believe we should look at what the planets were doing if we want to know what the star was. And that's because the Magi were astrologers. You'll often hear that the star led them to Jerusalem and then on to Bethlehem. But I don't believe that's the case. The star marked the fulfillment of the prophecies. When the Magi saw the star, whatever it was, that told them that these prophecies had been fulfilled. They had to interpret this celestial sign. But the star didn't lead them anywhere. It didn't guide them anywhere. They saw the star and they said, aha, it's time to act. So the question is, what star, or really what sign in the sky, would be sufficiently exciting to get the Magi excited and on their way?
People have long speculated on just what caused the appearance of a bright, moving star. Perhaps it was a supernova or a comet. Well, ancient records kept by Chinese astronomers show no record of an exploding star at the time of Jesus' birth. And the Magi would have taken a comet as a sign of some impending disaster, not the birth of a savior. Modern astronomers are left with only one conclusion.
To identify the star that the Magi saw, we have to look at the sky as the Magi would have seen it. So if you'll tell me when Jesus was born, I can crank up the desktop computer and see what the sky was like. If you were standing in Persia looking at the Star of Bethlehem, what you probably would have seen is a conjunction of planets. That's one planet passing another, two planets very close together.
If Moseley is correct, this is probably what the Magi saw. Two planets that looked like a single bright star moving across the night sky.
Now, I don't believe in astrology, but the Magi did. And according to the astrology of the ancient Near East, Jupiter, being the bright and largest planet, was called the king's planet. And the ringed planet Saturn was called the shield or defender of Palestine. And so now you translate. Jupiter almost hits Saturn. A king is coming to Palestine.
But if the Magi were astrologers, shouldn't we turn to astrology for the answers? Astrologer Jean Avery provides more insight on the Star of Bethlehem.
So I don't think Saturn would have been part, in my estimation, would not have been part of the Star of Bethlehem.
Could astrology provide the answer as to what planets would set the Magi on their course to Bethlehem?
If the Magi were in Persia looking up at the night sky, they might have seen this brilliance of the conjunction of Venus and Jupiter, which would have produced a very bright light, and it would have captured their attention, of course. Each planet has a description. It's, as an example, Jupiter is the planet that describes religion or philosophy or humor or this curiosity about the workings of the universe, the awe at the workings of the universe. And Venus, in my mind, in its highest connotation, describes social justice.
But was it a conjunction of planets?
A conjunction in astrology is exactly the same thing as a conjunction in astronomy. It's just that we ascribe a meaning to that conjunction. And the meaning of the conjunction of Jupiter and Venus is great good fortune. Harmony, beauty, pleasure, love, everything that could be wonderfully, positive in one's life.
But not everyone thinks that scientific proof is a necessary element to the Christmas story.
The attempt to find some kind of astronomical event at about the right time, I think misses the point. Whenever we try to say that a miracle is explained by some coincidence, it's not miraculous if it was just a coincidental Halley's Comet or something like that. The point of the story is this was a miracle, not that it was an accidental astronomical phenomenon.
Even as the miracle of the virgin birth took place in Bethlehem, there was another piece of this miraculous story unfolding in the East. Three Magi, or wise men, had already seen a sign in the night sky. A sign that a great king would be born in Judea.
We don't have definite information on this, but apparently there were Zoroastrian priests. As far as how many of them there were and who they were, this is all later legend. All we know is that Magi came from the east, and that's really the limit to our knowledge of who these specific people were.
The principles of Zoroastrianism include the belief in an afterlife and the continuous struggle between the universal spirit of good against the spirit of evil. The good ultimately prevails.
The Magi are really very well known as a fraternity, as a caste of very wise men. Now, they were the medical experts, the lawyers, they were religious historians, they were astronomers, astrologers, they were walking universities. And they're very well known both in Babylonia and Persia.
What we know is that the names of the wise men and the fact that one of them was traditionally black, for example, that Casper became African, for example, or black, is an interesting and charming tradition, but we know it doesn't go back very far.
But is it more important to know who the Magi were or what they represented?
The three wise men, I think, represent a number of different aspects of the story that Matthew wants to emphasize. For one thing, it emphasizes that Gentiles even are understanding the significance of this birth. It's borrowing the idea of, well, people in the East are very wise. They know such things. And so there's a kind of validation of this event that is lent to this by the arrival of three wise people.
Symbolism is important, but what other factors might affect the interpretation of their gifts?
The gifts of the wise men in its original setting undoubtedly simply represented that these are symbols of Gentiles, foreigners, recognizing that the birth of this child will have cross-cultural significance.
Three gifts are mentioned: gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Gold, a royal symbol, and also very handy to have as traveler's checks later on when they make that flight to Egypt. Frankincense, to indicate the priestly function of Jesus in the future. And myrrh, that's an interesting salve used medicinally, and it was also used to embalm bodies after death. So in a sense, you have these very prophetic gifts that were given Jesus right at his birth.
The Magi followed the star to Jerusalem, where they hoped to find the newborn king. But the Magi weren't the only ones to notice the star of Bethlehem. It also caught the attention of King of Judea, Herod.
They follow it, and the first place they come, since they interpret the star as a portent of an important royal birth, so naturally where they go is the palace in Jerusalem, where Herod, the king, resided. Herod was a killing kind of guy. He managed to get the kingdom through influential connections in Rome. He was a person who was known to be quite brutal to anyone who would threaten the security of his own throne. Whenever he suspected that there would be a rival, he killed them, no matter what age they were, no matter who they were. He arranged some pretext, and he had them strangled or beheaded or killed in one way or other. He was not interested in a new king being born. He was quite happy with the king that he represented right then and there.
The whole portrait that we get of Herod from the pages of Josephus, first century Jewish historian, almost an eyewitness, compares exactly with the portrait we get of Herod in Matthew's Gospel.
Once the Magi told him about the child, Herod became interested in finding this newborn king. Using the Magi as his unknowing agents, Herod sent them to search for the new Messiah in Bethlehem and report back.
They visit Jesus, they find him, they offer him their presents, and then they're told through a vision experience that Herod really is up to no good, and they bypass Jerusalem and go back directly to home, and that leaves Herod with the suspicion that there's a rival somewhere nearby. but he doesn't know who it is.
After Herod realized the Magi had tricked him, he proclaimed his edict that all boys under the age of 2 in Bethlehem be rounded up and slaughtered. Historical records of the time make no mention of this horrible event, leading some modern scholars wondering if it ever happened at all.
I think the reason so many people doubt this episode is because they think too many babies were killed. You know, some say hundreds of Jewish boy babies killed, but that's wrong. Bethlehem is only 1,500 people, maybe 2,000. Do an actuarial study of a town that size, you wouldn't have more than 20 babies, 2 years old and under, half of them the wrong sex. So we're talking about only 10 to 12 babies. There's no physical evidence to support the actual massacre of the infants, but Josephus tells us that in his last days, Herod was planning something far worse than killing the babies of Bethlehem. Herod was worried that nobody would mourn his own passing, and so he was going to give them something to cry about. He asked his dear sister Salome to arrest all the Jewish leaders in Palestine and have them brought into the hippodrome outside his winter palace at Jericho. And the moment his death was announced, they were to be murdered in cold blood. Why? So that thousands of households would be crying at the moment Herod died. Now, is that the sort of sweet fellow who could have killed 10 babies in Bethlehem? I do think so.
But thanks to a warning from an angel, the Holy Family fled into the desert, beginning a long journey toward Egypt.
Well, they could have put 2 and 2 together quite easily and then figured it would be the best thing to go. And then the vision experience, according to the Gospel of Matthew, that Joseph has, confirms that, where he senses a communication from God through an angel to get out of town because Herod is about to, the axe is about to fall.
As for the Magi, they returned to some unknown place in the east, leaving behind only the story of their visit.
Is there any proof that the Magi existed? We have unearthed some remarkable evidence that could prove they did. Modern astronomy can prove how the heavens appeared when the Magi first looked up and saw the Star of Bethlehem. But what about the wise men themselves? Does their story end with a visit to the infant Jesus, or is there more to learn about them? There was a good deal of debate among our own experts about who the Magi were, and if the 3 kings known as Gaspar, Balthazar, and Melchior even existed at all.
In modern times, the 3 Magi, Gaspar, Balthazar, and Melchior, were thought to be a fable. Scholars believed that their names and legendary kingdoms were nothing more than stories of fiction written after the Bible.
Are there more like this?
Yeah.
But when archaeologists began to search around the area of Quiquajar by the Iran-Afghanistan border, their digging revealed some intriguing clues that the kingdom of at least one of the Magi, King Gaspar, had actually existed.
So look.
The discovery of a large cache of ancient coins was remarkable. But their real value lay in an inscription on the backside.
It was made in Harwadia, in the kingdom of His Highness King Gaspar.
From the 3 Magi?
Yes, one of the 3 wise men.
It was a stunning revelation. The discovery of the coins from Gaspar's kingdom was the first hard evidence that these legendary kings actually existed. But the discovery of the coins was not the end of the story. In fact, it was only the beginning of a quest to discover the actual lost kingdom of Gaspar. When an American archaeologist working in Cairo heard rumors about the discovery of the coins, he decided to pursue the mystery further.
Welcome, welcome. Thank you.
I'm looking for an old coin.
Well, look here, my friend. I have many ancient coins for you.
No. I'm looking for a very rare coin. About this big, with the face of the king of Harawachia printed on one side.
Perhaps some of the coins from the dig in Quiquajar had not made it to the museum. If so, the antiquities markets in downtown Cairo was just the place to find out.
Anya? Perhaps you would care to buy.
How much?
For you, 300.
2.
Done.
This is Gaspar?
Ah, yes, Gaspar.
Where was it found?
It was found here, at Quiquajar, near the dried Lake Hamun.
The archaeologist's search paid off. He had found the coin and now had the keys he needed to begin his search. The archaeologist assembled a team and headed to a site at Quiquajar near the Iran-Afghanistan border in search of the ruins of the lost castle of the man on the coin, King Gaspar.
Day 15. We're still digging, but without any major find to report.
After weeks of digging without success, it looked as if the stories of a lost castle might be a fable after all. With time running out, the entire expedition was becoming a futile effort.
Hassan, Amar, come here. Professor! 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 Professor!
The professor rushed up the hill as the workers began to uncover the edge of something big.
It's part of a building. It's a foundation. Find the edges, clear away this dirt.
They had found the foundations of Gaspar's castle.
We found it, Professor, we found it.
If the coins had not already shown that the Magi were real, now there was concrete proof.
Yes, we did. Yes, we did.
But the story of the wise men does not end there. 16 centuries earlier, there'd already been an even more compelling discovery made by a Roman empress. Helen was the mother of the first Roman emperor to become a Christian, Emperor Constantine. As a devout Christian herself, Helen traveled the world building churches on holy sites and searching for relics of Jesus' life.
Look, can you see it?
On one such expedition, a young man dared to approach the Queen with news of a miraculous find. Helen could not believe her eyes. She had found the cross upon which Jesus himself was crucified. News of Empress Helen's find quickly spread around the world, until it reached a king in Persia who felt compelled to unite such a powerful relic of Jesus' death with one that his country had possessed for 300 years. A relic of Jesus' birth.
I have been sent by the King of Persia to give you an extraordinary gift.
Is this true?
The remains of the three Magi.
The Empress decided that the best place for this miraculous discovery was the church where she had been baptized in Milan. Helen made the long journey from Judea to deliver the chest to her grateful church, where it was carefully preserved and safely placed in its treasury alongside other riches.
Your gift will be treasured.
The remains of the three kings rested undisturbed in the church for 800 years, until an ambitious Germanic warlord, Frederick Barbarossa, invaded Italy.
No! Stop! Oh, no! Move! No!
Conquering Milan in 1162, Barbarossa's army ransacked the church and plundered its treasures.
Stop! For the love of your immortal souls!
Ignoring the pleas of the clergy, the soldiers began pillaging the church's treasures. At first, the soldiers busied themselves with the obvious valuables, but when they turned their attention to the chest, they had no idea of the significance of what lay inside. The priests' protests were no match for Barbarossa and his army.
No! No! You can't do this! No!
Barbarossa had to discover what was in the chest.
No! Please.
Take it away and feed him to the dogs.
No! No! No, you can't! No! No!
Barbarossa crowned himself king in Milan and sent the relics of the three Magi back to Germany, where they are still guarded to this day.
As you've seen, we have shed new light on the Christmas story. But the story does not end there. Most people think that the Bible is the only source that tells the story of the first Christmas. But the discovery of other ancient texts provides further details about the miraculous birth of Jesus and the miracles he performed in his early life. One such amazing find was the Gnostic Gospels.
What's fascinating is that there are sources on Jesus outside of the biblical documents. I think most people don't know that. The apocryphal Gospels were responses to the original four Gospels. They tried to fill in the gaps in the Gospel records, the childhood stories of Jesus that are not reported. We have other stories, the history of Joseph the carpenter, which explains what they made in the carpenter shop. We have the Arabic Gospel of the Infancy, which talks about these wonderful stories about the palm tree on the way to Egypt. We have a lot of these accounts that retell the biblical episodes, but add all kinds of detail.
Well, some of them, like the Gospel of Thomas, the infancy Gospel of Thomas, was probably formulated in Gnostic circumstances because there are tendencies in the way the story is told to stress Jesus' wisdom. The same thing is true of most of those infancy and extraneous Gospels, we can call them that, or apocryphal Gospels, that aren't in the mainstream, that weren't accepted as biblical. The history of the Gnostics is very interesting. Even as early as the 2nd century, that movement was a very strong movement. The Gnostic type of Christianity was the dominant type of Christianity.
Gnosticism comes from the term gnosis, to know, that is knowledge. And it was a sect, it was a philosophy that believed that there was a kind of secret knowledge that people should learn in order to fully understand what life was about, in order to understand what God was like.
They produced literature. There's a large amount of literature. In fact, the Gospels and the other Gnostic writings that recently were found are included in a book which is even longer than the New Testament itself. But then the official church eventually saw this as kind of an eccentric form of religion, off the beam, and took measures to suppress it. What happened to these Gospels and why were they eliminated? Well, at one point, actually, the bishops of Rome condemned them and said they weren't to be used anymore. Then the bishops of Rome, the popes, started to try to eliminate the use of these other materials which were considered to be not just irrelevant, but also harmful and damaging. One of the people there saw that the writing was on the wall for this Gnostic literature and put it all together and hid it at the face of a cliff.
How the Gnostic Gospels were brought back to life is as mysterious as the Gnostic sect itself.
The discovery of the Gnostic Gospels is an incredible story. It occurred in December of 1945 in Egypt along the Upper Nile River, about 300 miles to the south of Cairo. There was a group of camel drivers who were looking for fertilizer along the banks of the Nile. And one of the camel drivers happened upon an earthenware jar.
Ali! Ali, come quickly!
His brother, who was the leader of the group, whose name happened to be Muhammad Ali, took the jar and thought at first that it might contain a genie, an evil spirit that would haunt him if he opened it. Then he thought that it might also contain gold. And finally, his greed overcame his fear.
Give me a shovel!
And for a few moments, he thought that he had discovered gold because the air was filled with tiny pieces of this yellow substance. And he very quickly realized that rather than gold, they were tiny pieces of papyrus.
When Ali unraveled the leather pouches, they contained old papyrus text.
Take one, please.
The men left discouraged. Ali begged the others to take some of the papers, but they refused.
Take some. Take some. Take one.
Ali gathered the contents of the pot, thinking that he might be able to use or perhaps sell the leather. He didn't realize that the papyrus papers he had found were Gnostic writings, long thought lost.
They were, in fact, priceless manuscripts, and that would constitute one of the most important archaeological finds of the 20th century.
It took no time before he was approached by an antique dealer.
Where is it? Right here.
What happened was that word started to leak out among the antiquities dealers in Cairo.
You have to give me a good price.
Should take 500.
No, 500, no.
Ali thought that he was driving a hard bargain.
600? Okay, I'll take 600.
His fear of unleashing a curse would not be unfounded. Ali had no idea that the manuscripts he had found would set off a series of events that would affect the lives of those who touched them.
I have something here you'd be interested in.
Archaeologist Jean Dorès received an anonymous tip about the papers that sent him off to Cairo. Dorès was a well-known expert studying ancient Coptic texts. Upon his arrival in Cairo, Dorès received another message, this one from his old friend Togo Mina, head of the Coptic Museum.
Mina! Dorès, my friend.
One of the first people who found out about Muhammad Ali's discovery was Togo Mina, who was the director of the Coptic Museum in Cairo.
Mina showed Dorès a page of the Gnostic writings he had just purchased from a Belgian antique dealer, Albert Eid. These writings were long thought to be more fabrication than reality. Dorès wanted to see if there were any more pages in circulation.
I'll take you there.
While Dorès and Mina headed off to Alfred Eid's, the black market was doing a brisk business in manuscript sales. The black marketeer who purchased the entire collection paid antique dealer Maria Dattari a visit. It took her no time to realize the value of the papyrus texts and bought what she could afford.
How much do you want for them?
20.
No. That's too much.
15 will get you 2.
I'll take 2.
I'll be back. I'm sure you'll be wanting the others.
Eid was not surprised by his visitor's interest in the texts, but would not reveal where he obtained the manuscripts.
Where did you get this?
I have my connections.
How much for this one?
The government cannot afford this.
Don't take this out of the country.
At the time, the Egyptian government had a nasty habit of confiscating antique, valuable items without compensating the owner. So if you found something, if you wanted to sell it, it had to be done on the black market.
Dorès was determined to find the source of the texts. As a scholar, he wanted to keep the writings together. But he faced a wall of silence from the antique dealers in the street. With funding low, Dorès returned to Paris with little hope of finding the entire collection of the Coptic manuscripts. While he was in Paris, Dorès received a package from Maria Dattari. She sent a sample of the pages she had in her possession. Dorès realized that these texts were part of the Gnostic Gospels. Dorès was on the next flight to Cairo.
My God.
When he arrived at Maria Datari's office, he went straight to the manuscripts.
How did you... Where did you get these?
He wanted to be sure that they were the same pages he had begun to translate.
This is fantastic.
Dorès was reading the last Gospel of Thomas that contained the secret words of Jesus. He found the passage he was looking for.
Do you know what this means?
That's enough. I have my price.
But before Dorès could tell Maria about the curse, bombs fell. Egypt was at war. Mina and Dorès were hard at work securing funds for the manuscripts, but the war created chaos in the antique world. Word arrived that Maria and Albert were leaving the country with the manuscripts. Dorès rushed to the antique market to intercept Ide and Datari before they left the country. He was in a race against time. If he didn't stop them, the text could be lost forever. It seemed like Dorès was always 2 steps behind the antique dealers and the manuscripts. Dorès' worst fears were realized. He was too late. Both dealers were well on their way. But it seemed like the curse of the Gnostic Gospels began to take effect. Maria Datari was arrested by the Egyptian government, her manuscripts confiscated. Albert Ide fled with the manuscripts back to Belgium. Togomina died mysteriously of unknown causes. His quest for the Gnostic Gospels was his undoing. Albert Ide was later found dead in a hotel room.
Dorès went back to Paris and had not really been able to obtain the manuscripts, but since he was only a graduate student, the other people at the university seized control of the project and never really credited him for it.
The only one who gained anything was the Egyptian government, who confiscated the documents and locked them away in a vault.
No one knows if the misfortune that fell upon everyone who encountered the Gnostic Gospels was the curse or merely unfortunate circumstance. The manuscripts lay in a government vault for more than 20 years until James Robinson, an American scholar, translated them. These Gospels and other texts were used to uncover the miracles of that first Christmas. In Egypt, the focus of attention for most visitors is the awe-inspiring antiquities, ancient wonders from the past.
But our journey to Egypt centers on places the Holy Family visited on their journey to safety. The Holy Family fled Palestine from Bethlehem, bypassing Jerusalem because of Herod's edict. They headed west across the brutal, arid conditions of the Sinai. In fear of Herod's army, they often traveled alone on lesser-known routes.
Another surprising thing that happened in the flight to Egypt, according to these early apocryphal Gospels, is that the Holy Family was set upon by a squad of robbers who couldn't steal anything from them because they were so poor. And so these gentlemanly thieves opened up their brown bag lunches and shared lunch with the Holy Family. And Jesus would see one of those nice thieves 30 years later at a place called Calvary. You guessed it, the thief crucified on his right. The good thief, remember the account.
Other times they traveled in caravans and camped in groups for protection, slowly making their way to the safety of Egypt.
Well, the stories about the Holy Family's trip to Egypt, they're very moving. Like one where Mary washes his clothes and a person takes the water in which the clothes were washed and then pours it over a girl that has leprosy, and then the leper is cleansed. You know, it's sort of the power of Jesus even connected with the things touching Jesus and causing good things to happen for people. Another nice story was Joseph says to Jesus, boy, it's really a long trip. I don't know if we're ever going to get where we're going. And then Jesus says to him, well, don't worry about it. And the next thing they know, they're at their destination. Sort of miraculously, he transports his weary family to where they were going.
Whether they got there by foot or by a miracle, the Holy Family arrived at the Nile Delta. The land was a welcome contrast to the harsh desert they had just traveled. Here, water was plentiful, the land green and fertile. The family took refuge in this more hospitable region and found comfort in its bounty. After replenishing their strength and supplies, they traveled south. But the severe desert conditions forced them to rest in Wadi Natrun. Their visit made this land sacred. As a result of their stay, a large concentration of monasteries grew in the early days of Christianity. Today, only 4 survive. At Anbar Bishoy Monastery, Father Tadros explains the power of the area.
The importance of this monastery comes from the point that the Holy Family visited this area during the flight to Egypt. And this became a holy place. That's why all the people all over the world come to visit this area. And since the people know that it is a holy place, they visit it from time to time. When they get a problem, when they get ill, they pray. And when they came back, they found that their problems were completely solved and they became healthy. That's why they cling too much to this area.
The miraculous power of the first Christmas endures to this day in this sacred place. Countless numbers of stories speak of the miraculous power that has endured for over 2,000 years. In the shadow of the monastery in Wadi Natrun, 2 boys grew up to become brave soldiers. Neither man knew they were fighting in the same battle, but both soldiers believed the healing power of the Holy Family, followed them into battle, and saved their lives. General Harper and his troops found themselves surrounded by the enemy. The general had to move or suffer incredible losses.
General, I've got them on the phone. What's the situation? We're losing men left and right. We'll have to regroup and move in another direction.
Matthew, another soldier, volunteered to go ahead and survey the enemy's position and report back. The 2 soldiers had to cover a lot of ground if they were going to make it to the general and his troops.
Hey, if we keep to the right, we should be able to avoid the mud. Just keep on, follow me. Don't worry about me. I'll be right behind you. Keep going.
Matthew crawled over to his friend.
You okay? I think I just got the wind knocked out of me.
General Harper knew he had to put his men's safety before his own.
General, aren't you coming? You may go ahead. I'm gonna stay behind and make sure the area's clear.
You're gonna be all right. Doesn't look that bad.
I can't feel my leg.
Matthew tried to carry his friend to safety, but it was too late. He knew Luke's wounds were fatal. He had to put on a brave front for his fellow soldier.
But General, there's no time. You gotta get out of here. I told you to move out. That's an order, soldier. Hang on, buddy. Hang on, Luke. Hang on. It's beautiful. Luke! 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 Luke!
Matthew's cries for a medic were soon silenced by the enemy's bullets.
scared, Father. I know, Matthew. But I'd be worried if you weren't afraid. I can't think of anybody I'd rather have to defend our country than you. Thanks for your kind words, Father. I really needed to hear them. You'll be a great soldier. Your family will be proud of you. Keep me the first, Father. I bought this for you. Take it. It'll give you strength. It'll give you strength.
While Matthew lay injured, the general got the last of his men to evacuate the area.
How many individuals are left out there?
As Harper was about to pull out, an enemy rocket found his position. When the general awoke, a nearby battalion found him laying outside his foxhole.
You're wounded. I gotta get you some help. You need medical attention. Medic! I need a medic over here!
The men knew he was badly injured and rushed him to safety. Sergeant Adams found Matthew where he found treatment in the field tent. General Harper was rushed to a hospital in a nearby town because of his injuries. While in the hospital, General Harper experienced a strange phenomenon on 3 consecutive nights. The first time, he awoke to find the burns on his arm vanished. The next day, his leg was completely healed. On the third morning, he awoke to find the burns on his face completely gone. Harper knew his healing was a miracle. Matthew awoke to find himself in the medical tent.
Doctor, you better get in here quick.
What about Luke? How did I get here?
You were shot.
Am I okay?
You're going to be fine, but it was a very close call, Matthew.
What do you mean?
Let me show you something. This is what saved your life, young man.
The Bible had been given to Matthew by Father Barrow. The bullet which would have hit his heart was stopped by the Bible. The bullet came to rest on this passage.
It is by grace you have been saved, in order that in the coming ages he might show the incomparable riches of his grace, expressed in his kindness to us. For it is by grace you have been saved, through faith, and this not from yourselves. It is the gift of God. Because we lived in Wadi Natrun, we experienced what people were saying about this miraculous place. that we were blessed by the power of the Holy Family and carried that protection with us no matter where we traveled, including the battlefield.
Both men knew it was the spirit of the Holy Family that kept them from dying.
The vastness of the desert here is overwhelming. It was in this region, on the edge of civilization, that something profound may have happened over 2,000 years ago.
After resting at Wadi Natrun, the Holy Family traveled south. In due time, they reached Mostarat. The Virgin Mary Church was built to commemorate their stay and the miracle they performed. It was here that Joseph, Mary, and their young son found comfort in the shelter of this cave. The Holy Family had such an impact on the people of the town that its ancient name of Al-Mahama, or the bathing place, is a tribute to the fact that Mary bathed her child in the nearby waters. The Holy Family experienced such welcoming hospitality during their stay in Mostarat that they revisited it on their return to Palestine. It is told that Jesus was playing with a stick. Joseph took that same stick and plunged it into the ground, causing a spring to gush forth. This spring flows to this very day. The church provides a sanctuary for all that enter. People from near and far find comfort in the walls of this grotto. Many place prayer notes in hopes that the spiritual strength of the Holy Family will guide them through troubled times.
Today, most of us take for granted life's simple necessities such as food, water, and shelter. But for the Holy Family, the harsh desert conditions made these simple needs as precious as life itself. So, many times the miracle the Holy Family prayed for was simply water and shelter from the unending heat.
The journey from Mostarat to Mataraya takes less than an hour using modern transportation. By foot, it is more than a day's journey. So when the Holy Family reached their next destination, they were hungry, tired, and thirsty. 2,000 years ago, this site was little more than scenery. Here, the Holy Family stopped to rest under the shade of this tree and to eat of its fruit. The need for water overwhelmed the travelers. Realizing his family was in need, Jesus did what his father had done in Mostarat. He struck the earth with a branch from the tree. Once again, the earth yielded a spring. Mary was overjoyed and wished that Mataraya would be forever blessed. For over 2,000 years, this tree has been kept alive and the well flowing. As the virgin tree grows, so does the faith of the people who believe in the miracle of the first Christmas. Miracles that can be found in this place branch out and touch the lives of all who live in its shadow.
There are sacred sites all along the path of the Holy Family, monuments built to forever remind people of miraculous events which took place. What is most remarkable about traveling to these places is the extent of the faith expressed by the people who make these pilgrimages. No matter what religion or denomination, it is undeniable that the first Christmas set off an extraordinary chain of events that has touched millions and continues to demonstrate its spiritual strength.
The real testimony to the force behind these structures is the faith of the devotees. And perhaps the site that best illustrates the power of faith and prayer is a church in Zaytun, Egypt. This church not only serves the immediate community, but is a source of inspiration for countless others who enter these doors. In 1968, the world erupted in violence. International headlines concerned with student riots, assassinations, and war failed to notice what many describe as a miracle. On April the 2nd, Muslim workers at a local garage noticed a disturbance in the street. They ran to the front of the church and noticed what appeared to be a young woman walking on the dome. At first, they were concerned she would fall. Then they realized that it was humanly impossible to walk on the dome. It was then that they recognized the figure as an apparition.
It started with a rumor, actually, that, you know, the Virgin Mary is appearing on top of the dome of the church in Zaytun. I went to probably the church when I was a kid, 8, 9 years old, like I mentioned, probably anywhere between 6 to about 8 times. My dad took me to the church because he kind of like needed some sort of a solid proof. After a lot of hours standing in the yard of the church, that I was able to get a view of that white shaded ghost appearance of the Virgin Mary on the dome of the church. Probably we were there for something like about the day for about 4 hours, and when we were about to like kind of like give up, you know, we were tired from standing, and it was kind of like a nippy night, you know, a little bit chilly. There's a lot of excitement in the air, and usually, you know, before you know it, everybody's like quiet, and, you know, before you know it, we started seeing the almost like, you know, a half way of a person, like almost all the way down to the stomach area, the face, the chest of the Virgin Mary, all covered in white. It absolutely does reaffirm my belief. It's firsthand, you've seen it, you know, I was a kid, and it did have an impact on me, you know, all through my life until today.
But a person did not have to witness the apparitions to be touched by the powers of the Holy Family. It seems that when ordinary people need their help, it arrives.
In all likelihood, the Holy Family was heading to ancient Cairo. There they could safely rest, free from the fear of Herod's threat.
After finally reaching a safe destination in the Jewish quarter, the Holy Family entered a Roman temple. The mere presence of Jesus in the temple caused idols to fall. This angered the local magistrate. The family fled through the ancient streets in search of safety. Here under the church of St. Sergius, the family hid in a cave. When the magistrate found the Holy Family, the power emanating from Jesus and his parents stopped the official, turning his anger into admiration, thus fulfilling the Old Testament prophecy. St. Sergius Church has become a Mecca for the faithful. Every prayer made here seems to celebrate the miraculous capacity Jesus had to convert anger into love, despair into hope, and fear into courage.
The River Nile that flows through Egypt is its life force. Without it, the fertile lands that line its banks would be nothing more than a barren desert. So it is no wonder that the Holy Family would choose its nurturing waters for their journey back to Palestine.
Mahdi, a city divided by the Nile, reflects the diversity of Egypt itself. A modern city developed on the eastern bank, while across the river to the west, time seems to have stood still. The lush agricultural lands are still tended to by hand. Mahdi is the place where the Holy Family stayed before they set sail up the Nile for their return to Nazareth. All that remains as evidence of their stay is a set of steps that leads to the Nile. It was here, after receiving a message from an angel, that the Holy Family boarded a felucca, or sailboat, that would carry them north. The church which safeguards these steps is a source of inspiration and a symbol of hope for its parishioners. Many have found solace and strength for their struggles, knowing the Holy Family graced this area with their presence and fulfilled the Old Testament prophecy. Even though their stay was short, the examples of love, faith, devotion, and compassion which the Holy Family set have been a guiding force for many in this area.
We found numerous accounts where these miracles have occurred, but in the story you're about to see, not only was the couple blessed with a child, but the spirit of the Holy Family saved the baby's life. Sarah and her husband wanted to have a large family. For many years, they tried unsuccessfully to have a child. Sarah became depressed. Her husband, Samson, suggested they talk to someone.
I keep telling her things will work themselves out, but she won't listen to me.
Sarah thought she and Samson were being punished for some unknown reason.
We are good people. We don't ask for much.
Sarah, calm down. Getting upset is not going to help the situation.
We have so much love to give. I mean, why has God forgotten us?
Sister told us to pray for a miracle.
Just open your heart, and you'll find your way to Him.
In her heart, Sarah knew that Sister King was right. She suggested they put their faith in the Holy Family. Finally, their prayers were answered. But when the child was only a few months old, tragedy struck. Sister King approached the couple, who were visibly shaken.
The baby, he's sick.
Oh no, what's wrong?
Sister listened as they recounted their story.
He wouldn't stop crying, and he wouldn't eat.
One evening, Sarah went to check on the baby, only to find that the child was not breathing.
Samson! Quickly come here! There's something wrong with the baby! Samson!
What's the matter, Sarah?
The baby, he's not breathing.
Oh, my God.
Oh, no.
She and Samson rushed their child to the hospital.
He's not breathing. Oh my goodness, that must have been horrible for you.
The
child's diagnosis was not good.
They were able to.
He had a brain tumor.
He can breathe again, but when they examined him.
Even if the operation was successful, the boy would have severe brain damage. The parents were devastated.
And they don't give him much of a chance.
Sister King tried to keep the couple from losing their faith.
When Sister heard about our child, she told us to return and make a devotion. She assured us that if our prayers were answered before, they would be again.
This is what you should do. I want you to pray.
Sister King told them to write the baby's name on a slip of paper and place it on a special altar whenever they visited the church.
We prayed every day in our church, asking to help our child.
The couple followed the sister's advice. Each day for a month they visited the church and placed a prayer note on the altar. Sarah lit a candle and prayed for the Holy Family to give her strength.
Jesus came for you.
I wanted to send this letter because I didn't know if I could express my feelings in person. The night before the baby's surgery, something miraculous happened. I was sitting by the window holding the baby when a brilliant light filled the room. First, the light shone on me, then it fell on my baby's face. And at that moment, I knew that my prayers were answered.
The power of the Holy Family prevailed once again.
Sure enough, when we took the baby to the hospital, the doctors were baffled. Our baby was completely cured. I'm giving the money we would have used for the operation to the church. I know you will do something good with it. We were finally at last a happy, healthy family. I will never doubt the power of faith.
By piecing together ancient writings, we have been able to reconstruct the Holy Family's journey through Egypt. A miraculous presence endures with the people who live along this path. People who are living proof that miracles still happen through divine power.
Each year we honor the miracle of the first Christmas throughout the world. But what are the traditions that we celebrate 2,000 years after that event?
What's interesting in the way we celebrate Christmas today, a lot of travel is involved around Christmas time. Everybody's moving everywhere else. Well, the same thing was true of the very first Christmas. The Holy Family moved from Nazareth on a trip 6, 7, 8 days long, and Jesus is born in Bethlehem. They're there at least 40, 45 days minimum, and then comes the flight to Egypt and went back to Nazareth, from which they had set forth. So now they have come full circle. But travel was certainly associated also with the very first Christmas.
Our gift-giving tradition reflects the generosity that began with the visit by the 3 wise men. The lights that decorate houses remind us of the Star of Bethlehem that guided the Magi to their destination. Christmas celebrates the unconditional love that families provide. But it is important to remember the significance of the first Christmas before we get caught up in the frenzy of the holiday season.
The Nativity is so terribly important, not because of the Nativity alone, but because of who this baby would become. This is the baby that would later on become Jesus of Nazareth, the luminous individual whose career has changed all of human history.
The significance of Christmas, I think, is important to keep in a balanced perspective. We must never sentimentalize the birth of Jesus so much that we neglect that salvation and liberation came to us through Jesus at great cost and at great suffering, and that the message of Easter is essential for the message of Christmas.
As we have seen, the miracle of the first Christmas set in motion events that changed the world. And as we traveled on the path the Holy Family took, we revisited the places and miracles associated with the birth of Jesus.
From Nazareth to Bethlehem, to Egypt and back, our journey has been filled with discoveries and miracles. But none of this could have occurred without the miraculous beginning that was the first Christmas. I'm Roger Moore. Thank you for joining us.